Have you ever seen someone risk a fortune just to save $20? A few years ago, I worked in a call center that handled the status of certain applications. I can't share the exact type, but people submitted them for projects that involved a lot of planning, deadlines, and money. The cheapest application cost $900, and even if it wasn't approved, the fee was not refundable. Processing usually took a couple of weeks, but during busy seasons, it could take months. For this particular application, there was an optional $20 expedited processing fee. If someone paid it, the company guaranteed that the application would be processed within 90 days, or the applicant would get their entire $900 back. It didn't literally speed up the processing instantly, but it forced the company to prioritize that file if it approached the deadline. Most people didn't use it because the normal process was usually fast enough. Another rule: applicants only had 2 weeks after submitting their form to add the expedited fee. After that, the option expired, and if a form needed corrections, the clock restarted from day one. On top of that, applicants were allowed to submit these forms up to a year before they needed the approval. We always recommended submitting early to avoid delays, but people often waited until the last minute. One day, I took a call from a lawyer representing a huge international agency. His tone was impatient even before he told me why he was calling. I asked for his reference number and pulled up the file. The application had been processing for a little over 50 days. He immediately asked, "How much longer is this going to take?" I gave him the standard answer: processing could take up to 90 days, and there was no guaranteed earlier date. I then asked if he had chosen expedited processing. He said no, calling it a waste of money. Then he explained the situation. His client had a major project scheduled. Everything was already prepared, booked, and paid for. There were fixed dates that could not be moved. If the application wasn't approved in time, his client would lose tens of thousands of dollars for every day of delay. His law firm had been paid a large amount to manage the paperwork and deliver the approval on time. The project had been planned for over a year, and now they had only 2 weeks left. And he had not added the $20 expedited fee. I explained that without the expedited fee, there was nothing we could do to move the application faster. It was in the normal processing queue. This was a busy season, which was why the timeline was longer than usual. He didn't like that. He insisted that the process always took 2 weeks. He argued. He blamed the system. He said we must have misplaced something. I told him clearly that the system showed his form was properly submitted, but it was simply in a long queue. He demanded the number for the processing office. I explained they didn't accept calls and only communicated through paper mail. He demanded a supervisor. My supervisor told him the exact same information. After a long pause, he asked if he could now pay the $20 expedited fee. I explained that the deadline to add it had passed 35 days ago. His only option would be to mail a brand new application with the expedited fee included. But starting over would reset the entire timeline, and with mail delays and intake times, it was almost impossible for a new application to finish in time. He went quiet. Then he asked, almost in a whisper, what I thought he should do. I told him I couldn't give personal advice. What I could do was explain the timelines and the fact that his current application was far along and likely to finish sooner than a new one. At that point, he opened up more than I expected. He said his firm had been paid tens of thousands of dollars specifically to avoid problems like this. If the form wasn't approved in time, they might have to refund everything. They could even be blamed for the financial losses the client would suffer. On top of that, their reputation would take a hit they couldn't easily recover from. I asked him why they hadn't filed the form earlier, since it could be submitted up to a year in advance. He didn't have an answer. He admitted they didn't read that part of the instructions. They had always filed close to the deadline and never had a problem before. By the end of the call, he sounded nothing like the confident lawyer who began the conversation. He asked to speak to my supervisor again. My supervisor repeated everything I had said, but in a much shorter and more direct way. He eventually ended the call sounding exhausted. For reference, his application did end up finishing just before the 90-day mark. They got extremely lucky, and all of it, every moment of stress, came down to a $20 decision.